Hi, this is Wes Moon from Wisely. I'm here to introduce Alex Jivoff of Hopeful. He's the founder and CEO of this wonderful social media company designed to help charities find, reach more donors using social media. Alex is going to be presenting on Democratizing Your Base. It is a part of our Technology and Fundraising Expo held on November 12th. Over to Alex.
Alrighty, well, let us get started then. So everyone, as you have seen already for the last few minutes, we'll be talking about democratizing your base, but more importantly, using social media to find new donors. Social media, especially in the last several years, has become one of the most overlooked potential power tools for fundraising within the nonprofit space. We here at Hopeful specifically focus on only social media intelligence and how to turn that into a nonprofit donation engine. Whereas Wes and Matt and all of our dear other panelists, we all are basically pieces of the puzzle of your ultimate donor strategy. We're here to focus on the day-to-day small micro amount donors who are giving away $1, $3 on a consistent, reliable basis. So you can be sure to actually be driving that kind of revenue and making sure you're not reliant on a few mega donors to be driving your budget and operations. So what are we going to talk about? We'll talk about a few things. So of course, who we are, why we're hopeful, myself and my team, why are we in a position to be talking to you about fundraising on social media? Definitely want to go through an overview of online giving and how it stands today, both from the nonprofit and the donor perspective, especially with all the new numbers that have just started coming out from this year with COVID. Getting ahead on all those statistics is definitely going to be an important piece of this. So giving that historical landscape, then social media. What is it that's actually driving social media fundraising today? Where can it go? And then finally, how to tell a story using those insights. So by being able to collect the simple metrics in one place that many for-profit businesses already do, but orienting it specifically towards your fundraising agenda, your constituency, having that available is going to be absolutely key to telling the proper story on social media and getting that repeatable, scalable donation income from the day-to-day individual donor. And then we'll finish off talking a little bit about what's next on the horizon. So specifically talking a little bit about how we and Wisely use artificial intelligence to drive our products, and a success story from an organization that we have worked with for the last year or so that we've been in operations, where simple tweaks that they used using social media intelligence helped them drive donations online by over 800%, just as a nice proof point. So who am I? I am the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Hopeful. I'm Toronto born and raised, and my resume is all over the place. So I will spare you guys all the fine details, but I'll let you know the reason I talk a lot about storytelling and know what's going on in the nonprofit world with social media is I started off as a journalist. I was a Toronto City and the national reporter here in Toronto at the National Post. And then afterwards at Politico, which is a prominent Washington, D.C. based magazine based on congressional legislation. So worked in Canada and the US on the journalism side as well as in corporate sales. I've worked in ad tech, digital marketing, and small to medium-sized business software, both in the US and Canada. I'm also trained as a web developer and really started the idea of Hopeful when I was doing pro bono web development work and marketing consulting for nonprofits here in Toronto. I myself have been involved in the nonprofit world in some capacity my entire life, whether it just be when I was younger, volunteering where I could, helping out with nonprofit events that my family would be putting on. Now I've evolved a bit, having worked directly and sitting on the board of several different nonprofits. Most recently helping start and joining the board of a fantastic organization called the Canadian Autism Society. If you haven't looked into it, very, very great organization. If anyone's involved in that cause, always recommend helping out the small nonprofits that are starting out. But that's my plug there. Now, in terms of who are we? So Hopeful is a startup that's been around for about a year and a half, and we have really shown some really good growth in terms of the tech community. We're members of the Ryerson DMZ Technology Accelerator. Some of you who have nonprofits that have been around for a while may be also not available, but aware of the Social Venture Zone, which is specifically an impact and nonprofit based accelerator that Ryerson runs in conjunction with the DMZ. They are both that community is the #1 university affiliated accelerator in Canada, providing us support, insight, and connections with different organizations in Canada as we were initially growing. And then just about a week ago, we were accepted into the UC Berkeley Skydeck Accelerator in San Francisco. That is a very big boost in our organizations. We're one of 20 high potential startups chosen out of about 2,000 international applicants. And if anyone is joining us from the US, you may know the University of California system is one of the biggest feeders for nonprofit management graduates in the world. And we are the first nonprofit technology company to be accepted into this prestigious program. So it's a very exciting time to be part of that. So who's our team? So we've been growing pretty steadily at this point. Our team is based all over the world. My co-founder and I met while I was over in India just before the pandemic hit. Asan down here in the bottom right. And we have team members located in Toronto, California, India, Pakistan, and 3 different time zones. We've been remote since the start of the pandemic and since before then. So always exciting that we can be a truly remote first organization, and all of us have experience in the nonprofit space and building impact-driven technology. So when it was first starting this, it was great to see so many people all over the world be involved with an impact-based and a nonprofit-based technology company. So of course, wanted to let you see who's all working on this. Now, let's get into the meat of the matter. So currently, in terms of the state of play of things, nonprofits have raised about $450 billion annually on average for the last 10 years. Obviously, this number has fluctuated, but generally been sitting in the $450 billion range. For 90% of the nonprofits out there, almost half of them rely on revenue from donations. There's no option for government funding, corporate sponsorships. They are either small organizations who cannot tap into government funding or who have not at this time, and they really rely on their local community to lift them up. Private individuals writing small to medium-sized checks on a reliable basis to keep them going, and they primarily have been focusing on a lot of different things, whether it be email marketing, crowdfunding, peer-to-peer fundraising. These kinds of things have been absolutely critical for their growth and survival. But social media is something that is now quickly becoming one of the key elements here to be working. And that's when we get over to the donor front. Donors are the individual people who are cutting those checks to your organization. They're the ones who have the passion to be actually paying out of pocket themselves to support your organizations that are having a very real and tangible impact. And more, where they go is where a nonprofit has to follow in order to make sure that they can be as competitive as possible. So what's interesting is that until only about 2 years ago, email marketing was the dominant player in the online giving space. You had to have a good email strategy. You had to know when to do those touches with your donors to make sure that they were giving reliably. But now that has changed. The middle of this year, social media is the top driver of giving, and it's only growing due to COVID-19. With physical fundraising being impossible, about 50% of that $450 billion has been involved in physical fundraising and likely will not be possible again until the end of next year. Being able to leverage social and getting to the billions of people that use the different social media platforms is key. And 39% of millennials and 33% of Gen X donors are most inspired to give by what they see on social media. This is significantly above email marketing at this stage. Offline marketing such as mail-in, door knocking, of social media as a top fundraising strategy, not only because of COVID-19, but as an actual generational shift is something that's going to be incredibly important to leverage in order to stay competitive and flourish for the future. Now, this is just a quote that was pulled from the Blackbaud Online Giving Index as of this year. Online fundraising is increasingly important to nonprofits across the board. Online donor retention has become slightly easier to maintain as donors warm up to monthly recurring donation options. Mobile fundraising and mobile optimized donation pages are more important than ever, but securing mobile donations is generally more difficult than on traditional desktop browsers. Nonprofits should devote energy specifically to developing mobile fundraising strategies. So why do I say mobile here in terms of online giving? So it's important to touch on that because let's look at the online giving universe as a whole right now. Online giving has been increasing consistently since about 2015 at double-digit rates. The numbers on online giving at COVID of 2020 haven't come out yet. Giving Tuesday is coming up, but I can expect that to be well above the 23% number reported in 2017. One-time online giving has also been increasing by double-digit numbers, but over half of donors worldwide are preferring to give with their established credit or debit cards. That provides a lot of opportunities to be building solutions that don't have them in front of their desktop. It has them in front of their phone, wherever they are, their tablet, what have you. With everyone already having either PayPal, Apple Pay, Apple Cash, their Bitcoin wallets now located on their phones, there is a potential for the proper fundraising strategy to have you making sure that if they see something they engage with on social media as they're scrolling, they can essentially go into one different app and make a different donation, or even make an in social media app donation to your nonprofit right there on the spot. That's a one-time online giving opportunity that is almost frictionless if you tell your story correctly to them. And that is something that is key to become repeatable and scalable as time goes on. And that's where we're going with it. With online monthly giving having grown by over 40%, which is a huge number, and the common theme here will be double-digit growth in all of these things I'm talking about, it's a very key option to be leveraging all your different online giving options. Although I am focusing on social media, it's very, very important to be focusing on the fact that online is where the future is going to be. And given that we don't know what the state of play will be with the new normal, even now with news of a vaccine being in the works, it's still very important that you future-proof yourself against any kind of events that stop you from being able to physically fundraise. Now, one of the most interesting things is that being able to pay via PayPal, being able to pay via bank or wire transfer, or being able to pay via digital wallet, these numbers were all in the 2 to 3% range of preference to give just 2 years ago. These numbers are already increasing significantly. And as we move to a more cashless society, these opportunities to be donating directly on PayPal, directly via debit transfer, so even being able to set up a monthly online giving subscription, which I'll get into later, but being able to have these tools available to take any kind of effort out of getting that repeat donation is a huge opportunity to be growing, and something, as you see, the wave has already begun in terms of online giving. Now, back to the mobile side. Social media is key here because the online donations that are being done now has increased by over half through mobile devices. People will go on TikTok, they'll go on Snapchat, they'll go on Instagram, Facebook, what have you, overwhelmingly on the Instagram, overwhelmingly on their mobile devices. And this is something that is already being capitalized on in the for-profit advertising world as well, with in-video and in-mobile advertising platforms in the for-profit world having grown to about 72% of the total advertising market in the last 5 years alone. That trend remains exactly the same for the nonprofit world as well, because online donation pages, although converting at a very decent 8%, is something that will be able to grow consistently and something that will be only more important to properly set up for mobile going forward. Half of all of your website traffic came from mobile and tablet users last year. I would not be surprised if that number was pushing 60 to 70% once the numbers come in for COVID-19 and everything that happened in 2020. And the gifts that are being given here are not insubstantial. The average gift is $79, with tablet users giving $96. Although social media is an opportunity to have consistent micro donations, it does not have to be micro if you are properly orienting your fundraising campaigns. If you can find consistent mobile users who are willing to pay $80 for every time they engage with your cause, that is a potential to be lifting your fundraising strategy, depending on the size of your organization, by an exponential amount, which only gets back to the amount of work that you can potentially do to impact your organization and impact your community and your cause even better.
Alex, I personally have a question.
Absolutely.
I think you just said that tablet users' average gift is higher than phone users. Is that also higher than computer users?
Yes. So computer users, originally the hierarchy was, if you're a desktop user, the average gift was about $108. That number is now decreased to just about 100 from the latest data that I have available, while tablet users has gone up by about $4. So given that tablet use in general is increasing overall in terms of what people use rather than buying a traditional desktop computer, those numbers are going to be equalizing very quickly, but they're already pretty close to even. And in my opinion, the conversion of it is also going to be much easier, because if you're not at your desktop, you're not going to be able to necessarily get those eyeballs, but if you go on a tablet-friendly, mobile-friendly site, you could be on a plane in the middle of the ocean and do that $96 gift. Yeah. So the opportunities are much higher on conversion there.
And then the follow-up question, you think that tablets are being used more to consume information by people than their desktop and perhaps even their phone. In particular, they're being advertised. So that's sort of like a lot of that gift is being driven through tablet advertising.
Correct. Now, given that, one thing I do want to touch on is that the nonprofit space as a whole and the clients we work with, using paid advertising is something that's quite rare, given that the cost that it takes to maintain paid advertising channels, the time that it takes to manage it, especially for grassroots organization, is often out of reach. Organic traffic, however, is something that is consistently easy to grow. Like, for example, with Loretta being very ahead of the curve here and using TikTok, being able to have the opportunity there to have platforms where people are still getting 10 million followers within 6 months is something that, if you start orienting for those platforms as they come online, you can essentially solve your fundraising problems from day one. And that's something that each individual nonprofit needs to think about, is if you tell your stories correctly, the amount of eyeballs you can get on that cause are unbelievable. And the fact that even the Washington Post, just because of the interesting ways they've run their TikTok, is one of the most followed TikTok accounts in the world, says that it's not just individuals, people, brands, nonprofit brands can do that as well. All through organic. Now, I did see as well, I did want to pause on this note then, Wes, you did make a good point. Any questions that anyone would like to ask, feel free to jump into Q&A. Happy to pause here before I start moving more deeply into the social side of things.
I did see Gary raise his hand, but I wonder, Gary, if you actually meant to raise your hand or not.
I think
I'm just going to go ahead and lower your hand for you there, Gary.
Yeah, I think that was a rogue hand raised right there.
Well, I have to say, this is super interesting to me. I've never actually looked at any analysis that broke down, for instance, tablet versus phone. And the last time I looked at this, no one really cared about the device other than like, was it reactive? We do have something coming in from Bruce here. Bruce says, do you distinguish between desktop, laptop, tablet, and phone?
So in terms of Bruce, if you could elaborate for me, in terms of us distinguishing, what do you mean? Do we distinguish?
It seems to be something that is trackable through your Google Analytics.
Yeah.
Right, Alex?
So if that's the case, yes. So one of the things that Google Analytics does and what is capable within our platform too, you can definitely track the type of machine. You could, if you have enough volume of data, you can actually track the demographic of the person, because when they do sign up, they do have to provide a lot of that information when they sign up for Google accounts. So you can actually track very deeply what these kinds of things are. And as long as you're managing that data correctly, you can take advantage of that. So being able to track the type of device is definitely something that's possible. And I think I saw something in Q&A as well, Wes. I don't see it on my
side. I see it here. Loretta, our TikTok person, is there a difference in how donors are likely to give on a donation platform versus like the social media channels? So Facebook is sort of pushing their own, like this is the actual transaction that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Is there a difference that you've seen, Alex, if people transact on their own website versus through some of the third party where it's being advertised by Facebook or some other group because they want to actually have more transactions?
So Loretta, that's actually a great question. So what we've actually, and this is the first time I can say it today, what we've actually been starting to explore at Hopeful and why we're looking for nonprofits to actually interview about this is that exact question. If we were to build something that would allow them to be directly sourcing their funding through social media, so without that middle party, is that something that would be of value? With the current tools that exist with Facebook and Instagram donations, those are either already connected to your website or connected to your payment processor. So either way, in order to directly see what the correlation is, has been very difficult thus far. So something we're exploring within the Hopeful platform. We've been trying to crunch those numbers, but it's tough to do just because there's no direct source to be doing it at this stage. And it's something that's very new. Instagram and Facebook only really included their fundraising tools within their platforms about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, Alex, and I think in this particular instance, Loretta really cares because like some organizations that are political or can't be political, they don't actually have charitable status.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting one.
Absolutely. And Loretta, I'm happy to connect with you on this after the panel and dig into this too, because that's a very interesting question, especially as Wes said, with these times, any kind of political action, it's important to consider that too. Perfect. All right, so let's move on, and if there's any other questions, we can do it near the end. So moving on from the phone side of things, social media. At this point, social media, as we all know, is absolutely everywhere. There's been about 30,000 tweets that have happened during this sentence as I've been talking. 95 million Instagram posts a day, 31.25 Facebook posts per minute on average. So this is huge numbers used by over a quarter of the population of the planet. And all of them are on average using their phones between 4 to 6 hours per day. So this is constant eyeballs on constant platforms where they are already being advertised to, but they are increasingly also donating based on what they see in terms of those messages. So in terms of how this applies for nonprofits, getting data on the nonprofit's history of social media is essentially boils down to Facebook, because ultimately Facebook is where many nonprofits still live. It's where there's been actual engagement in terms of online giving, and there really has not been hard efforts to use conversion tools on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, what have you, because those have been fairly the newer tools to use. They're much younger than Facebook traditionally is. And there's something that require expertise to be navigating. In terms of Facebook, it's accounted for 3.5% of all online revenue, and it's all concentrated heavily around Giving Tuesdays. So if you don't have a Facebook strategy in place in the next couple of weeks, I highly suggest, if you haven't been planning that for next year and for this year, definitely be focusing on that. And one of the key things is a sizable portion of that revenue is from audience that the nonprofit may not have any other way of reaching. So this is where the democratization portion comes in. With the right tools and intelligence, you can easily see within your data, are there nonprofit donor bases that are resonating with your audience, but you rather that you have not seen before. For us, for instance, with Hopeful, when we were first starting out as a company, we were noticing that we had nonprofits resonating with our messaging in Nebraska. And how we actually got some of our first clients was in the US based off that method. Without being able to dig into the social media data that was happening easily, we would have no way of knowing that. Rather than just accounting for online revenue, it's important to see why and where people were engaging with that. And overall, what were you engaging with the story with? I know for a lot of the people I've talked with today, I know Pablita as well, just to shout you out here, for those involved with the hospices, health-centered nonprofits, the actual revenue that's being driven by Facebook is significantly higher than average, about 9.5% of all online revenue. And this is partially due to a lot of potential factors. Also, given that many volunteers themselves are over the age of 55 in the space, and Facebook is still a platform that's widely used in that demographic, that can account for that. But Facebook is still something that's important to leverage, especially if you're in the animal welfare or the nonprofit health space too. Something that I want to post there. But one of the key things that started Hopeful itself and the wave of social intelligence tools is when we were first starting out, what I kept hearing was, we have no idea what our ROI on social media is. We're posting for the sake of posting. Everyone's on social. We're doing it, but we're doing it haphazardly. We're doing it to get things out there. There's no real growth. We don't know how it's aligning with our brand. And that's something that's very easy to get up and running now that there are tools specifically built for the nonprofit space to do this. And that's where we come to leveraging social media for fundraising. As I mentioned earlier, almost 40% of millennials, just over 30% of Gen X donors are most inspired to give what they see on social media. You can be able to not only engage directly with them as the new platforms online, you can be the first to the post and actually win your audience before other organizations that may have similar messaging than you can actually get to them. But this is the first time that you can directly use tools to target fundraising based on milestones. Is it their birthday? You can see that on Facebook. You can see that on Instagram. Maybe you say, hey, on your birthday, would you like to do a good deed? Give a donation of $3 to the cause. Very popular way of fundraising that was done during the mail-in world and the email world as well. Can do that now for birthdays, every possible milestone, holidays. If you wanted to say, hey, do you want to give $3 on International Cupcake Day, if you so chose, you can do something like that now, as long as you have the information that you need to be doing that properly. And now the metric side. Simplicity is the key here. Anywhere that you look in the nonprofit space, but being able to just say likes, comments, shares, those key metrics are the most important. But one of the things that we see is that if you get into a situation where you're trying to manage your non-social media as if you were a large corporation, that is a way to really fall off the wagon, especially if you are a smaller nonprofit. Stick to the key things. How wide is your net getting cast, and how can you convert? Generally, how we track these two things is how wide is your net getting cast, is your impressions and your likes. Who's doing the double tap scroll through that you know you're on their feed somewhere, and who's getting eyeballs on your cause. And who's sharing and commenting? People who actually went out of their day and time to share and write something. Those are people you can immediately convert. You stick to those courses at least they're starting out, and then you build from there as your operation gets more sophisticated. Now, going to a case study here. So this is an organization in Minnesota that we have been working with since before we launched, when we were first testing Hopeful just at the beginning of this year. And as I mentioned, we did officially launch in July. And just by properly using those 4 metrics, seeing who was sharing, seeing who is liking, seeing who is actually just getting eyeballs on this, and then actually orienting their posting in the Hopeful platform and posting their storytelling towards the projects they were funding. They are specifically, they fund online projects only. So we were easily able to track specifically what donations were coming to which different projects. They ended up raising their online donations by about 875%. This is without any of the advanced features that now exist. This is without anything fancy. This is simply having everything in one place, easy to use, and saying, here's where people are coming from. This is what they're looking at. This is why they're looking at it. How do we tell them a message about this? This is the easiest way to quickly get a handle on your social media fundraising and just your social media presence, even if it's just you, the executive director, you don't have someone helping you out about this. So this is something we did want to highlight is a very important point. So next steps here. I mentioned a lot is social intelligence, purpose-built tools, not just for social media, but your entire data operation. Make sure that you have your data as clean as possible from day one. Know where your donors are, be engaging with them constantly. Even if you don't want to get a tool yet, if you're sitting on your social media accounts and you see people commenting, send them a DM, comment, where are you from? Why did you engage? Start collecting those responses to see what the common threads are, and be able to start building those databases. Even if you're not ready to have an actual dedicated tool, build them in Excel, see what you can hash out on that side of things, and then tell those stories in favor of your data. Are there people in certain geographies that are engaging with you? Are they engaging specifically because one kind of your messaging? That's something that's very key to be able to track. And in the technology startup world, we call it customer discovery. It's the same thing here, except it's nonprofit donor discovery, and it's very, very key to use. And it's just getting a handle on that data from day one. Now, let's talk quickly before I wrap up here in terms of artificial intelligence, which is the fun stuff that we're working on. So in terms of this, artificial intelligence is where Wisely and ourselves first met. They were the cool AI company when we were just starting out, and we are basically, they are our foil, where we focus on the smaller donors in intelligence. Wisely is the guys you go to for your mid-level donors and high-ticket donors to use AI. Now, the reason AI is because it's, at this stage, data optimization is the norm for the for-profit industry. There's so many different tools, so many things that simply automate your day based on the data you have. And it's something that's super easy to set up, albeit largely expensive in the for-profit world. But by including AI within your organization properly, overall, that the artificial intelligence revolution is raising profitability by an average of 38%. And in the US, that's about $14 trillion by 2035, which is now 15 years away. That is a massive amount of money to be raised just from what the 3 goals of AI are, which is capturing data, organizing data, learning from data. Those are the 3 main points of artificial intelligence. In nonprofit fundraising, what it's going to do is take everything I've been talking about in terms of learning about your donors and posting and making it better. Doing your data analytics aggregated from your donors, and according to NP Engage, just some of the metrics you can track: previous donation amounts, event attendance or virtual event attendance, wealth amounts, when their birthdays are, where are they located, previous donor history. The list goes on in terms of the data sets you can run. And even with us starting to bring our artificial intelligence portion of our platform online, we've had some of our early clients start getting these kinds of deep insights on day one, just by having a tool that can basically sift through their data easily. And the reason for that is in terms of the data silo trap, in the nonprofit world, 6% of nonprofits globally use data to optimize for their minuscule number. Only 5% of nonprofits are using data in every decision they make. 45% of nonprofit leaders don't know where all their data is being kept. So in order to fully take advantage of all these technological concepts and ideas that we've been talking about, it's very important to have a sense of where your data is and get it in a good and workable state. Scale your analysis on social media to any amount of data. You can have millions and millions of followers, and that will probably result in 100 million rows of data to be able to get insights through. Recognize the keywords, the images, hashtags, anything that's leading to donations. And then finally use that to build things up, where your audience is, where are your trends, and what is it that you need to do to be pursuing your donors. This is absolutely mission critical. Forget anything in terms of the social media side, email marketing, those individual pieces, those come second to making sure that you have all the data and intelligence you have clean and ready to go so you can be most successful with the information that you're already bringing in on your donors. Oh, sorry guys, that was rogue. Yeah, and then just a reinforcement, this is on the AI side internally. It's already growing. It's expected to grow by about 361% in the next 2 years. About 12% of nonprofits worldwide have reported that they've begun implementing artificial intelligence tools. So the wave in the space is starting. And it's not just related to fundraising. Consider what tools you can be using there in terms of just automating your finances, HR, external comms, anything like that. One of the biggest things, one of the most valuable resources you have is your time. So don't consider AI as just a fundraising tool. Consider it as a tool for all aspects of your operation. Now, just want to leave off on a last note. As I mentioned, and some of you who joined for the breakout saw, we are an organization that's we just launched. We have our initial clients who have been great to us, but we want to make sure that we can cast our net and provide as much of an impact as possible, especially as we're going into the holidays. And in return, getting as much feedback as we can on what we should build, what we can improve on, and how do we make your lives easier. So as such, we're offering a 2-week free trial for anyone who signs up from this webinar today. From then on, $14.99 per month, which is significantly lower than what we generally have. And then finally, if you really, really love it and you think it's something that can help you scale, $10.99 charged annually. It's about $131 one time for every year. And in exchange, just let us know how we can be better. And that's it. Otherwise, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We started about 10-15 minutes early, so I think I hit the number well, Wes.
You did great, Alex. And I do have a question, and I think I'm gonna make an attempt on Callie's name.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I got it right. And we've been having a little bit of a side conversation about her question, and it's about demographics.
Yeah.
So when we think of who our average donors are, often we think of someone who's a little bit older and perhaps not engaging on social media whatsoever. And or maybe they know of it, but they don't really do it, if you will. Can you talk about that for a couple of minutes?
That's a great question. And I was reading it out of the corner of my eye. So thank you, Callie, for that. So short answer is, if your donors are not on the internet at all, then we're kind of at a non-starter on social media here. However, considering that we're looking at this from a generational shift perspective. So especially as your donors get older, as you may be potentially about future fundraising, if your fundraising is already working when you're using mail-in, you're using physical events, however you connect with those donors who may not be on the internet, absolutely keep that as your main strategy, but start thinking about the long-term future. Is there something that you can devote one volunteer to? Is there, so that you have some free time available, that you can start growing a following and a brand within even your local community on social media? Because millennials and now, and this is coming from someone who is a millennial, will pretty much get very passionate and engaged with something that immediately resonates to them. The message just has to get to them. So if you want to start basically using this as a strategy for future proofing, I 100%, that's where my recommendation. But this is not, if you already have those set donors that are not going to be on the internet, by that point in their lives, I don't think we're changing that. Like no matter how cool artificial intelligence may be, that's something that's not changing. But it's also important to be thinking about the future and how to build that as well.
Yeah, so let's be a little less concerned about how we secure revenue from those donors who are giving through alternate channels, and more about how do we secure our future through social media channels.
Exactly.
Right on. One final question, Alex, and it's maybe it's a two-parter. When we think about social media, are we doing posts or are we doing stories? What works better there? And then organic versus paid, and what kind of investment do you need to make to get started?
So that Mayros, you just asked basically the eternal question that every ad agency on the planet always starts out with. So there's no universal answer. Depending on what kind of organization you are, depending on where you're located, you can easiest way to start off is, I would even start, if you don't want to be looking at tools related to your accounts, baseline, go on Google and start searching what are the Instagram trends for nonprofits located in this area, Instagram accounts in this vertical located in this area. You'll get a sense of immediately what time of day often is the best time to post based on your demographic. And you'll be able to get a sense of what the mix is between stories and posts. That's going to be very rough information, but it's a starting point to go off there. Paid ads, honestly, is something, it really depends, because the ROI on Instagram on paid ads is really bad. It's something that even we at Hopeful, we don't use them. And it's really tough to be scaling that on Facebook, which is, if that's your primary channel, you're not going to be able to scale that properly unless you have a large budget. It's a very oversaturated platform for that. Organic is really king when it comes to the nonprofit space. And that's why storytelling and crafting content properly to your audience is so key, because that's how you outcompete someone who's primarily using the paid ad side of things. So I'm happy to connect with you later on if you want to do an individual analysis. We do this with each of our clients every other week to help craft their messaging. So we could definitely talk, but Google is your best friend in how to get started on everything else, and Google as well.